Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you started questioning your own sanity? You replay the conversations in your head. You analyze every text message like it contains the code to the universe. You ask yourself, was that too much? Was I too available? Did I say the wrong thing? And the worst part, you start believing that if you just figured out the right words, the right approach, the right timing, everything would finally make sense. But what if I told you that everything you thought was broken about you was never broken at all? What if the confusion you felt was never your fault? What if the person who made you feel like you were too much was actually running from their own inability to stay? That is exactly what we are going to talk about today. And by the end of this video, you will have something that most people never get in a lifetime. You will have absolute clarity. You will understand a pattern that runs through millions of relationships. And once you see it, you will never let it control you again. You will never get played by it again. You will never shrink yourself for someone who cannot meet you where you are. Now, I need you to listen carefully because everything I am about to share is built on real psychology. The kind of psychology that explains why good people keep ending up confused, exhausted, and questioning their own worth. This is not about blame. This is about finally seeing what has been right in front of you. Here is the painful truth that most people never accept. When someone consistently makes you feel uncertain, when they pull away, right when you think things are getting real, when they come back only to disappear again, your brain does something extraordinary. It starts treating the inconsistency like a puzzle. Your brain says, there must be a reason. If I can just understand it, I can fix it. And that single thought keeps you trapped in a cycle that slowly destroys your confidence, your peace, and your ability to trust your own instincts. This is what psychologists call an intermittent reinforcement pattern. It is one of the most powerful psychological traps that exists. And the people who fall into it are not weak. They are not stupid. They are not too emotional. They are people with big hearts who believe that love should require effort, that connection should be earned, that if someone truly loved them, they would never have to fight this hard to keep them. But here is what happens next. That belief becomes the very thing that keeps them stuck. Because the harder they try, the more they shrink. They start apologizing for having needs. They start dimming their light so they don't seem too much. They start abandoning themselves piece by piece just to hold on to someone who was never truly holding on to them at all. And the cruelest part, the person on the other side of this dynamic doesn't even realize what they are doing. They are not villains. They are not manipulators. They are people running from intimacy because closeness feels threatening to them. It is a deeply rooted psychological pattern called avoidant attachment. And once you truly understand it, once you see it for what it really is, everything changes. You stop trying to solve the unsolvable. You stop taking the silence personally. You stop chasing someone who is running, not because they don't want you, but because they don't know how to stay. And that is the moment you finally break free. So, here's what I want you to do. Stay with me until the very end. Not because I'm asking you to, but because everything you need to never feel this way again is inside this video. Every answer you have been searching for, every question that kept you awake at night, every moment where you felt alone in your confusion, we are going to address all of it, but only if you stay. Because what I am about to give you is not just information. It is a complete psychological framework that will rewire how you see relationships, how you see yourself, and how you decide who deserves access to your life. You are not going to walk away from this video the same person. You are going to walk away as someone who finally understands why things happened the way they did. And more importantly, you are going to walk away knowing exactly what to do next. So, make sure you watch every single minute because the clarity you gain in the next few minutes is going to save you years of pain. Let's begin. So, let me ask you something. When the silence came, when the warmth suddenly disappeared, when they pulled away, right after you thought things were finally clicking, what did you do? Did you blame yourself first? Did you go quiet for a few days, hoping that space would bring them back? Did you send that one message you swore you wouldn't send? And when they finally responded, not with enthusiasm, but with something short, something half, did you tell yourself that was enough? That is the trap. And most people never even realize they are standing inside it. See, what happened to you was not random. It was not bad luck. It was not a sign that you are difficult to love. What happened to you was a pattern, a predictable psychological pattern that has played out in millions of relationships. And the only reason it keeps working is because most people never learn the rules of the game they are playing. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is reading a text message 3 times trying to decode whether it means something or nothing. Someone is lying in bed at midnight wondering if they should reach out or stay silent. Someone just got a reply that's settled, and they are turning it into a full conversation in their head. That someone is you. And the reason you keep ending up in that same place is because you have been looking at the problem from the wrong angle. You have been asking, what did I do wrong? But the real question is, what are they running from? And once you understand that question, everything changes. Here is the truth that nobody told you. You were never the problem in your situation. I know you feel like you were. I know there were moments when you thought maybe I am too much. Maybe I asked for too much. Maybe I need too much. But let me be absolutely clear with you right now. Needing consistency is not being too much. Wanting someone to show up is not being needy. Expecting effort is not being demanding. Those are not character flaws. Those are the basic requirements of any real connection. So what was really happening? The person you were giving everything to was running from the very thing you were offering them. Intimacy, real emotional connection, someone who actually cared. And the closer you got, the more they pulled back. Not because you scared them away with your love, but because your love exposed something inside them they were not ready to face. And that is the part nobody talks about. You were not too intense. You were not too available. You were not too emotional. You were a person with a whole heart offering it to someone who did not know how to hold it. And instead of recognizing that, you blamed yourself. You dimmed yourself down. You made yourself smaller so you would not seem overwhelming. You started editing your texts, planning your conversations, monitoring your own energy so you would not push them away. And what did that get you? More confusion, more silence, more moments where you sat alone with your phone waiting for a reply that never came with the same energy you sent it. The pattern was never about you not being enough. It was always about them not being able to stay. And I need you to sit with that for a second because this is where the shift happens. Once you truly accept that the dynamic had nothing to do with your value, you stop trying to fix something that was never broken. You stop begging to be chosen. You stop shrinking so someone else can feel comfortable staying at a distance. You start looking at the situation with completely different eyes. You start seeing the pull away before it happens. You start recognizing the silence that always comes after closeness. You start understanding why someone can be incredible for 3 days and then disappear for a week. And once you see it, once you truly understand the pattern, you cannot unsee it. That is not a curse. That is power. Because now you are not a victim of confusion anymore. You are someone who knows exactly what is happening and why. And that knowledge is the thing that sets you free. So here is what you need to understand. The reason you kept getting played was not because you were foolish. It was because you did not have the map. You did not know where this road was going. But now you are about to get that map. And by the end of this video, you will understand not just what avoidants are, but exactly why they behave the way they do, why you kept falling into the same trap, and most importantly, how to never fall into it again. Now that you understand the pattern was never about your worth, let's go deeper. Let's talk about who avoidants actually are. Not in a judgmental way, but in the way a scientist studies a phenomenon with precision, with clarity, and with the understanding that every behavior has a cause. An avoidant person is someone whose attachment system developed differently than most. Early in life, they learned that emotional needs were not going to be met consistently. Maybe their caregivers were physically present but emotionally distant. Maybe they were expected to be strong, independent, and self-sufficient at an age when they should have been allowed to be vulnerable. Maybe they got the message, whether directly or indirectly, that needing others was a sign of weakness. And so they adapted. They learned to self-soothe, to self-comfort, to handle everything alone. That became their survival strategy, and it worked. It kept them safe. It kept them from relying on anyone who might disappoint them. But what they never learned was how to stay emotionally connected to another person without feeling suffocated or threatened. Now, here is what that looks like in practice. When an avoidant person meets someone they find interesting, the connection feels exciting. For a short period, everything feels new and bright. They pursue. They communicate. They show up with energy and enthusiasm. But the moment the relationship starts requiring real emotional intimacy, the kind where vulnerability is expected, where consistency is required, where two people actually merge their lives, something inside them triggers. It is not a conscious choice. It is a nervous system response. They start feeling trapped. They start feeling like they are losing themselves. They start telling themselves that they need space, that things are moving too fast, that they are not ready for what the other person is asking for. And so they withdraw, not because they stopped caring, but because closeness started feeling like danger. And this is the part most people miss. The withdrawal is not a decision. It is a defense mechanism. Their brain is protecting them from something it perceives as threatening. Even though there is no actual threat, the person who loves them is not trying to trap them. The person who wants consistency is not being unreasonable. But to an avoidant nervous system, emotional closeness feels exactly like losing control. So what happens next? They pull back. They go quiet. They stop texting as much. They find reasons to create distance. And when the other person notices and asks what is wrong, they either go completely silent or they give an answer that sounds reasonable. I have a lot going on. I need some time to think. I am not sure what I want. And all of those answers feel confusing to the person on the receiving end because none of them explain the sudden shift. But here is what is really happening. The avoidant person just activated their protection mode. They are not necessarily angry or done. They are just overwhelmed. And because they never learned how to communicate that overwhelm, they go silent instead. They retreat. They wait until the panic subsides. And when it does, they often come back, not with a full explanation, but with a small gesture and a text, a call, a moment of warmth that makes the other person think things are okay again. And that is exactly when the cycle resets. The other person relaxes. They stop questioning. They accept the return as a sign that things are fine. And for a little while, things do feel better. The avoidant person seems more present. The connection seems stronger, but the underlying pattern never changed. The same trigger exists. The same fear is still there waiting to be activated again. This is why the dynamic feels so confusing, because it is not linear. It is not consistent. It goes in circles. Close, pull, return, close, pull, return. And each cycle leaves the other person more exhausted, more uncertain, and more emotionally invested in trying to solve the puzzle. That is the anatomy of avoidant attachment. Not cruelty, not games, just fear. Fear of losing independence, fear of being consumed, fear of needing someone so deeply that losing them would destroy them. And once you truly see that fear as the engine driving the behavior, something shifts. You stop taking the silence personally. You stop believing that if you just tried harder, they would stay. You start recognizing the pattern for what it is, a protection mechanism, not a reflection of your value. That is the difference between being stuck and being free. So now you know why avoidants pull away. But here is what most people never see coming. The hardest part about this whole dynamic is not the withdrawal. It is the beginning. Because the way an avoidant person shows up in the beginning is nothing like what comes later. In the beginning, they are attentive. They remember small details. They ask questions that make you feel seen. They text back quickly. They make plans. They laugh at your jokes. They make you feel like you have finally found someone who gets it. Someone who is consistent. Someone who actually wants what you want. And that feels incredible, especially if you have been hurt before, especially if you have been with people who were inconsistent, who left you guessing, who made you feel like you were not enough. When someone shows up with that kind of energy, your brain does something powerful. It starts building hope. It starts assuming this is finally the person who will stay. It starts investing emotionally at a pace that feels safe because the other person seems equally invested. But here is what you did not see. That warmth in the beginning was not fake. It was real. The avoidant person was genuinely interested, genuinely excited, genuinely drawn to you. But that initial phase of connection did not trigger their fear response yet. They were still in the attraction phase. The emotional intimacy had not reached the depth that would activate their protection system. So they showed up fully. They showed up like someone who was ready. And you believed them. That is where the trap begins. You built expectations based on a version of them that existed only in the early stages. And that version felt so real, so promising, that even when the shift started happening, your brain kept holding on to it. Your brain kept saying, but they were so different in the beginning. That has to be who they really are. But that is not how it works. Once the connection deepens, once things start feeling real and committed and mutual, the avoidant person begins to feel the pressure. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because your emotional availability is now reflecting back to them everything they have been avoiding in themselves. Your willingness to be close is triggering their fear of losing autonomy. Your consistency is making them feel trapped. Your need for real connection is exposing how much they have disconnected from their own emotional world. So they start creating distance, not with a dramatic exit, but slowly. Subtle changes that most people miss at first. They take longer to respond. They stop asking questions. They stop making plans. They become harder to reach. And when you notice and ask what is going on, they either deflect or go completely silent. That silence is what destroys people because in that silence, you start filling in the blanks. You start wondering what you did. You start questioning whether you were too forward, too available, too emotionally open. You start editing yourself and your behavior in hopes of getting back to that early version of them. You start tolerating the inconsistency because you keep believing that if you just find the right approach, the right words, the right balance, they will come back fully. But they will not. Not the way you need them to. And that is the cruelest part of this pattern. They will come back just enough to keep you hanging, just enough to prevent you from fully walking away. A text here, a call there, a moment of warmth that feels like an apology, but is really just them managing their own guilt. And then they disappear again. And the cycle continues. This is the mask. The mask is not the coldness. The mask is the warmth that made you believe they could stay. The mask is the version of them that existed before intimacy became real. And once you understand that the person you fell for was real but incomplete, that the moment things got serious, they changed not because of you but because of them, you stop chasing a version that no longer exists. You stop trying to recreate the beginning, and you start recognizing the cycle for what it is. A predictable psychological pattern that has nothing to do with your desirability and everything to do with their capacity.